topic for today, the title is it's not rise and shine, it's shine and rise. Now, where did this idea to shine and rise come from? Let me answer that and let me tell you that. To do that, I wanted to take a step back into history and first learn a little bit about where Easter came from, how it came to be, and even the word Easter itself. First, this is going to be a tongue twister here. You're all going to be quizzed on this. Here we go. Easter is observed on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox, as calculated according to tables based in Western churches on the Gregorian calendar. I've never heard of the Gregorian calendar. Has anyone heard of that? Okay, I feel okay. But in Orthodox churches, it's based on the Julian calendar. Now that one I have heard of. You ever heard of that one? Okay, so some of you have. This day came to be known as Easter Sunday, the day on which we celebrate the resurrection of Christ. A little history on the word Easter itself. I found this to be very fascinating. The name Easter, and I researched this from the website Christianity.com, was derived from the Saxon word, and I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, Erstre, denoting a goddess of the Saxons, in honor of whom sacrifices were offered about the time of the Passover. Another speculation is that the word Easter is from the Norse. Now, Norse, my Viking ancestors, hey, we made it into history here. Eastur or Ostara, which means the season of the growing sun or the season of new birth. The word east comes from the same roots. In this case, Easter, the word Easter would be linked to a changing of the season, which that kind of makes sense. We're sort of, well, Oklahoma is a little bit different in learning, still being new here. You can have winter and spring and all in one day. Yes, I had my air conditioner on last night and my heater this morning. What's up with that? Okay. A more recent and complex explanation comes from the Christian background of Easter rather than the pagan. The early Latin name for the week of Easter was, all right, I'm going to completely botch this pronunciation too, but Hebdomada Alba, or White Week. That's what the Latin is. Well, the Sunday after Easter Day was called Dominica in Albis, from the white robes of those who had been newly baptized. The word alba is Latin for both white and dawn. People speaking Old High German. How many people speak Old High German now? I speak, I guess, Young New German. I don't know, Young Low German. Made a mistake. So the people speaking Old High German, this is common in how languages develop, made a mistake in their translation and used a plural word for dawn, ostran, instead of a plural for white. The word ostran comes from the German Ostern, which was then translated into English as Easter. There you go. And finally, one last little bit of history regarding the Easter holiday. What is the significance of Easter holiday? What is the significance? Again, and this is according to the website Christianity.com. I'm going to go ahead and read this. Bear in mind, I read fast. The significance of Easter is Jesus Christ's triumph over death. His resurrection means the eternal life that is granted to all who believe in him. The purpose of Easter also means the full confirmation of all that Jesus taught and preached during his 3-year ministry. If he had not risen from the dead, if he had simply died and not been resurrected, he would have been thought just to have been another teacher. That's according to Christianity.com, just another teacher. However, his resurrection rebuked all that and provided final and undeniable proof that he was really the Son of God and that he had overcome death once and for all. The resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead is the core then of the Christian gospel. St. Paul says that if Christ is not raised from the dead, then our preaching and our hope are in vain. Well, thank God that he did rise, otherwise I'd be up here. Certainly without the resurrection, there would be no Christian preaching or Christian faith. That's a powerful statement. The apostles of Christ would have continued as the disheartened group which the Gospel of John depicts being in hiding for fear of the Jews. They were in total despair until they met the risen Christ. Then they touched Christ's wounds of the nails and the spear. They ate and drank with him. The resurrection became the foundation of everything they said and did. For a spirit has not flesh and bones, as you see that I have. That's from Luke chapter 24, verse 39. The resurrection then affirms that Jesus of Nazareth as not only the prophesied Messiah of Israel, but as the King and Lord of a new Jerusalem, a new heaven, and a new earth. So the question I ask, must you rise in order to shine? Must you rise in order to shine? I want to go back to that first sentence that I mentioned and read it again. The significance of Easter is Jesus' triumph over death. And again, what Christianity.com informed us, that it was only after Jesus's death, his resurrection, that he became truly recognized as the Messiah. Otherwise, history potentially could have labeled him as just another teacher. Just another teacher. So again, I ask everyone at home here today, did Jesus rise and then shine, or did he shine and then rise? Would the world know about Jesus today, if not for his resurrection? In my modest opinion, actually my very modest opinion, it's not what Jesus did. It's who Jesus was. Who Jesus was as a man, a person, a human, just like me, just like you at home, just like you here today. Jesus did not rise and shine, but rather Jesus shined and rised. Not because of what he did, though he did do great, but again, because of who he was. And so I ask all of you listening, very humbly, I ask this question for you in your life, today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. Will you rise and shine, or will you shine and rise? Which one? For you, your family, your community, your friends, your loved ones, which one? For your life and for the world. The first one, I argue, primarily focuses on what you are doing, whereas the second one focuses on who you are being. And it is in the beingness, the shining, that the kingdom of heaven is found. It is in the beingness that the kingdom of heaven is found. So then I ask you, what is the kingdom of heaven? What is the kingdom of heaven, and where is it found? The kingdom of heaven, very simple, is who you are. Do you know who you are? If I were to ask you that question, who are you? How would you answer that? What would you answer? Jesus taught us and answered that by saying, I am the light and the way. Jesus also said that you are the light and the way. Jesus said specifically, ye are the light of the world. So what is your light? Is it love? Maybe it's kindness. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's anxiety. Or maybe it's all of the above. People often ask, I've heard this question many times, what would Jesus do? Do what Jesus would do. I've also heard this question many times, what would love do? I've answered this question before, and I'll answer it again. Jesus would do nothing. Love would do nothing. But instead, I would reframe the question and ask, who would Jesus be? What would love be? Who will you be? Who will you be? For it is in the beingness of who you are that you will find the kingdom of heaven. You are the kingdom of heaven. You find the kingdom of heaven once you fully realize and become aware to who you are. So I ask, what is the whole purpose of life? What is the whole purpose of your life? Many people ask, what is the purpose of my life? If I only knew the purpose of my life. I'm going to tell you right now what that purpose is. From a spiritual perspective, that purpose is very simply to realize who you are. You see, that is what Jesus did. And that is what Buddha did. They simply realized the truth of who they were. Most people go around life, I've heard this many times, thinking, oh, my purpose in life, it has to be something I'm doing. If I only did this or if I only did that, then life would be great. My life would be filled with meaning. It would be filled with purpose. It would be filled with happiness. But virtually nobody had ever even heard of Jesus until after he spent 40 days in the woods. No one had ever heard of Buddha until after he sat under the Bodhi tree. Life's not about what you do. Life is about who you are. Your purpose is to be who you are. So again, I ask, who are you? Ernest Holmes also states this very clearly when he says, spiritual mind practice does not call for deep concentration, but for deep realization. Spiritual mind practice does not call for deep concentration, but for deep realization. Deep realization of what? Of who you are. When we rise and shine, when we focus on what we are doing and not on who we are being, Ernest Holmes also said this: if this deep realization were something we had to implant in our minds, we should be lost in a sea of speculative philosophy, lost in the sea. When we focus on what we are doing, we become lost. Ernest Holmes goes on to say, the wonderful thing about this is that the deep realization is already there. Ding, 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 ding. It's already there. When we clear away the confusion. The confusion is we're trying to do something instead of be something. If one had to put life into life, he couldn't do it. He would be lost. But if life is already at the center of everything, one can recognize it. When life, when you, who you are, is at the center, you recognize it. This is what spiritual mind practice is. It is the realization of a deep and abiding harmony at the center of everything. I don't know, I'm not a political scientist. Luckily, I'm not a politician. Thankfully, I'm not a lawyer. If anyone is a lawyer, I respect you. Thank you. I might need you someday. Hopefully not. But perhaps maybe this explains why there seems to be so much confusion, stress, and anxiety in the world. Not just now, but throughout the course of history. We are trying to put life into life, or as I said a few weeks ago, we are trying to figure it all out. And in the process of trying to figure it out, we get lost. It is not rise and shine, but shine and rise. So allow me to share a story with you that I think will help you understand this point further. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there was a man, a humble man. Some might have labeled him poor and unworthy, even a bit of a scavenger or loner. He was not married. He had no children. He had virtually no material possessions to speak of, no home, no car, no money. He also had no job, at least not anything that we would consider a professional job, so to speak, by today's standards. Oh yeah, he also had no formal education. And I don't know if he could even read or write. I'm not sure if he could, or if he ever read a single book or ever wrote a single paper. He did have one thing though. He did have one thing. And that thing was a deep realization and awareness of who he was. So off into the world this man went. He traveled the land, wandering from place to place. And along the way, he met some pretty interesting people. And he started to tell them things like this: ask and it will be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened for you. And somewhere along the way, he also managed to cure the sick and restore their health. Who is this vagabond of a man? Some people began asking. Slowly, word got out, and his reputation began to grow. There's a man amongst us who can cure the sick, they cried. But mind them, he did not. Fuss, he did not. He carried on, continuing about his business. It is not what goes into a man from outside that can make him unclean. It's what comes out of him that makes him unclean. This is what he told his followers, who are now gathering by the hundreds. This is blasphemy, cried the Emperor Tiberius. Pilates, take this man, have him crucified. We will have none of this. And so the Roman governor Pontius Pilate did as he was told. And hence Jesus was crucified. That's it. End of story. Or is it? 3 days later, that same man that some had labeled a vagabond, would again rise. A resurrection, as it would later come to be called. And the people the world over took notice, and they began to follow him more en masse than ever before. They worshiped him. Do what Jesus would do, they cried. And what was it exactly that Jesus did? What did Jesus do? He took the time to realize who he was. For it was in his own realization of who he was that he was able to do all those other things. The Father within him did the work. Jesus could not rise and shine, For in the end, he was already shining. He was and always was, from the moment that he was born, and even before then. You, Gail, I see you. You are already shining. You are already shining. From the moment you were born, you have been shining in all the glory that you are. Did you know this? Do you know this? Do you realize who you are? Jesus again said, to hang on to your life is to lose it. To let go of your life is to save it. So in the end, I say, let go of your life. Let go and seek not to rise and shine, but to shine and rise. For it is in the shining that you will find your true purpose, your true calling, your true gifts to humanity. In the end, Jesus did not even have clothes on his back. Yet, he has been able to influence, lead, teach, guide, and inspire millions the world over. It's not because of what he did, but because he realized the truth of who he was. That was his secret. You have that same secret. You have that same secret. So in the end, I ask, who are you? Who are you? Shine and rise and go forth from this day in your life. Shine and rise, shine and rise. Thank you. Happy Easter, everyone. And so it is.